Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's edition of the Gotta Pop podcast. I am thrilled today to have the guest that I have on the show because this is an author and well, gosh, he's all kinds of things. He's an author. He's an actor. He's a singer. He's a TV host. He's done some dancing. He's an all around just such a talented person. It's Herbie J Pilato. Welcome to the show, Herbie J.
Hi, buddy. How are you?
I am wonderful, thanks. And I appreciate you doing this. You and I spoke before I hit record here saying that we have been associated with each other online for many years, but this is the first time we've actually talked. So this is quite a thrill for me. And I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, you've got such a good spirit about you that I kind of already knew you. I mean, it just comes through in your posts and on social media. We got a good vibe going on here, I think.
We do, and I appreciate you saying that, and I feel the same about you. And folks, if you don't follow Herbie J online, you really should, because not only does he post about fun things related to the history of TV and other things in pop culture, but he's got a wonderful positive attitude. And positivity is a big thing with Herbie J, and I think this is just going to be a good positive show here. And what I did last week, some of you may have already seen, is that I posted a review online for a new special commemorative edition of a book that Herbie J released many years ago. Was it 2007 when it was first released, I think?
Yeah,
Somewhere
yeah, I
around
think
there.
so.
Okay.
Hmm.
And that is the Bionic Book, The $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman Reconstructed. And for me, I know other people maybe around my age and even younger, those were such iconic shows that we were just glued to the TV and watching every week. And were you a fan of them during their original run? I imagine you were, Herbie.
A- Absolutely. During their original slow motion run.
Yes.
Actually, I
By
used
the
to
way,
do,
I saw on your YouTube page where you were doing the slow motion run with the sound effects, and you even had on a red jacket like Mr. Steve Austin wore. Oh,
blue.
was it blue? Oh, my
Yeah.
apologies. My apologies. These don't work as well as they should. My glasses.
Yeah, no, I loved them from the minute those shows aired. I mean, in my eighth grade front seat row with Miss Ganzini at St. Anthony of Padua in Rochester, New York, I used to do the slow motion thing. Used to drive her nuts. So
I bet it did.
yeah,
And that was
I loved it from the pilot to when the show became like a monthly series, which was really two additional pilots in the fall of '73, and then when it went weekly, and then when Lindsay Wagner got her own show, well, that
yeah,
was just the
it
peak.
was must watch for sure.
Yeah.
And I had said this in the review that I wrote. In 1973, I was just 7 years old, and so I was a prime. I was already into comic books and watching cartoons that might have had superheroes in them. And here you had Steve Austin, who he may not have worn a costume or had a superhero name, but he was definitely, he actually, he was super because he had these bionic parts and just. An amazing character, and it's got such an interesting history. And I had also said in the review that I wrote that I initially, even though I was already a fan of yours, I want to share this story too. I've been a fan of yours since book one. I bought the Bewitched book probably right after it came out. What was that? 92?
92
That's what I thought. I remember I used to go to this little
when I
bookstore
was
here in Delaware.
15.
Oh, yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. I was just 3 years old and I bought that book. Uh, but I used to go to this little bookstore. It had a performing arts section, and I would look in there every week, every time I went to the bookstore, and for things because I was already a TV junkie, and looking for anything that might be interesting. And a lot of it was fine, but so much of it was around maybe British sci-fi shows and things like that I just wasn't into. But then
Mhm.
one day I'm looking, I'm like, the Bewitched book. There's a book about Bewitched, one of my favorite TV shows ever. I mean, if it was on back in the, back in the days of UHF, for syndication, it was on maybe 3 times a day here
Sure.
in my area. It was on a Philadelphia station, and we used to be able to get a Baltimore. I'm in Delaware, so we had Philadelphia and occasionally Baltimore stations. So I watched it sometimes 3 times a day. I was glued to that. When I bought your book, I just loved it. Boy, the amount of research you did for that and for this book too is just amazing. And that's where this is a long-winded way of me getting to the point that originally I wasn't too interested in the Bionic Book because I figured I know all this stuff. And then
Mhm.
when I read it, I was just I couldn't put it down. And my wife's trying to talk to me, and I'm like, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, honey, I'll be right there because I'm there geeking out. I geek out over this stuff, and I have a feeling. Maybe I'm wrong, but I have a feeling when you were doing this book, you were just probably in seventh heaven, talking to the producers and writers and the actors and actresses because
Well, I went to
I
the,
know
I
your
went,
love for TV.
yes, no, I went to the set of of Bionic Ever After question mark, which was the third and final Bionic reunion movie. And Richard Anderson, who wrote the foreword to the book, he invited me. So yeah, I was there on, reuniting with Steve and Jamie in real life, and it was just so very funny because my well, it wasn't funny that my father was ill, but I was taking care of him, and I said, Dad, look, I was invited to, Charlotte, wherever the heck they did, South Carolina somewhere.
Hmm.
And he says, go, just go, do what you got to do. So it was a very sweet thing that he allowed me that.
Oh,
Even
that's nice.
it was just wonderful. Anyway, so I call my mom to see how my dad is, and I find out that the film is really about Steve and Jamie getting married. So I'm like, they're getting married, Mom, they're getting married. And she Lee Majors and Lindsay Wagner go, no, no, Steve and Jamie. So yeah, that was kind of an amazing thing
I bet
to
it was.
to be there and see them do the special effects, film those sequences and then have them add. It was wonderful. It was a dream come true. I
Oh,
wanted to
that's
say
great.
too what you had mentioned, or to follow up something on what you had mentioned
Hmm.
about how they didn't wear costumes like Wonder Woman, Super. That's what a key element of the show's success is that these were realistic superheroes who were not perfect. They weren't all powerful. They had
Yes.
flaws, and that really allowed us to relate to them in a very human way because they were human.
Yeah.
Superman was like from Krypton, and even though Wonder Woman was human, she was from Amazon Island. But Steve and Jamie were in a world that we identified with and could really access. And so that was a key element to the show's
I
success.
think you're right. Definitely a key element. I think I know there's a couple of parts in the book where I've seen quotes from Lee Majors and I think I forget one of the producers where it was more about the humanity of the characters. Exactly like you said. You didn't tune in even as a kid. I didn't tune in every week just to see Steve Austin beat up somebody with his bionic parts. I was tuning in for that person. He was a hero whether or not he had the bionic parts or not. There was something inside of him, and it was the same later for Jamie. And what's nice too is they weren't people that got these powers and went crazy with them. They both struggled with it. And, you see that right in the pilot for the $6 Million Man, where Steve is really having a hard time adjusting to this new life, and he didn't want to be a robot, and he didn't want to be a puppet for the government. And you saw these real human struggles with these characters throughout both shows. They weren't just
Absolutely.
mindless fluff by any means.
Absolutely. I mean, those are all excellent points and very true. And the great thing about it as well is that the show has inspired scientists to develop actual cybernetics and bionic limbs and eyes and ears. I mean, and not to
Yeah.
mention that also to the show influence people to become secret agents or to work for,
Yes.
the CIA and all of those things. So it was
Isn't that
just,
amazing?
it really, really is, which is really kind of to what I talk about in general with my retroactive television book, which really, proves that classic TV shows across the board have had a positive influence in some way. There are those who became attorneys because of Perry Mason and doctors because of Marcus Welby and yada, yada, yada. So it's the Bionic shows really are prime example of just how much of positive influence classic TV shows can have on society.
Yeah, I mean, you are absolutely right. And, as you were saying that, I was thinking of just different shows in my childhood and even into my adult years that have influenced me very strongly. I look back on, I used to watch things like Mr. Rogers when I was a kid, and some people might think that's kind of corny, but there were life lessons that I learned there that, I still carry with me and through other shows too. Like I was into Happy Days and things like that. And, if I saw Fonzie saying it wasn't cool to do that, then I'm like, okay, I can't really do
There you
that.
go. You see, and that's the great. I mean, Mr. Rogers and shows on PBS were so direct about it. Here we are going to teach you something. The pop culture, more mainstreamy shows that are narrative situation comedies, dramas, TV movies, whatever. It's not like Mary Tyler Moore said, okay, this show is going to be about female journalism and how it's going to inspire you, Oprah and Katie Couric, to do
Right.
what you do. They weren't direct about it. It just happened, like by osmosis, if that's the right way to explain it. So, you
Right.
know what I mean? The PBS was like, okay, we are public television, we are educational. But mainstream pop culture TV was like, these are shows, that people just automatically learned in subconscious level. I think, at least I am like living proof of it. I became an author because of the shows,
Right.
So,
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny. I remember too, even when I was a kid, and when after the Bionic Woman premiered, I remember one of my classmates. Her name was Julie Gonzin. I remember her saying, "I want to be a teacher like Jamie Summers." Yeah, I remember that. And actually, she's not a teacher now, but she did teach for a while. So then she got into nursing. But that's it. But anyway, still, even as a
similar
kid,
thing. Either way,
yeah,
it was the heart of what Lindsay Wagner brought to that character. That, I mean, just she across the board, she was amazing. She wasn't Charlie's Angels. She wasn't Policewoman. She didn't care about all that glamour. Lindsay
exactly.
brought something to Jamie that no other actress could have done.
You are absolutely right. I can't imagine anyone else playing that role. And I mean, no disrespect to this actress, but there was a period where that show was rebooted. It had a much. I never even watched it, to be honest with you. But there
I
was
did.
another version of the Bionic Woman, and well, I didn't watch probably because okay, that's not really Jamie Summers. That's not my. That's
It's
at least
not.
not my Jamie Summers.
It wasn't. It was a noble try, but what they forgot to do, and this happens all the time in reboots, they lose the heart and soul and mythology of the original show because they want to put an edge on it, which is fine for today. I get that. But
hmm
don't lose what the original charm was of the original series. There was no Steve Austin. There was no, I mean, she was all bionic, really, which is cool. She had both
hmm
arms, this new bionic woman, eyes and ears, where Jamie only had the ear and one arm. And there
Right.
was a way that they connected her entire body to the cybernetics, which is good. I liked that part. But it was cold. It was
Yeah.
dark. And there was no warmth to the series. And Lindsay Wagner and Jamie, it was all about warmth,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I remember watching it as I think when Bionic Woman, I think, came out 75, 76,
Yeah,
somewhere around there. And
76.
I was 9, 10 years old. And like most boys, I'm like, oh gosh, she's so pretty. But it wasn't just a matter of, like you said before, it wasn't like, I don't know, she was a beautiful woman, but you weren't watching it just for that. She was this warm character who she could be a mentor to you, someone who inspired you. She was just such a kind person, always trying to do the right thing for her students, for her job as an agent.
And
Just
that
such
was
an
all
inspirational
Lindsay. That
character.
was all Lindsay that she had constant meetings with the writers to make sure that show, especially in the third season when it switched from ABC to NBC, which was a whole other thing.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
read
she
that in your
she really
book. Yeah.
Yeah, she really rode that show. She cared and she won an Emmy. She was the
Yeah.
first actress in the history of TV, first actor, anyone, to win for a leading role in a science fiction series.
And that's amazing, isn't it? Especially
That's
for in
big.
the 19 at any time, but especially the 1970s. Because it was just such an interesting time period for television. You had a lot of shows trying to be like on the edge, with your like maybe a Three's Company, which I'm not putting that down in any way,
Right.
but I'm just saying it was this good family. You could sit down and watch it with the whole family. Kids could watch it on their
Absolutely.
own. Adults without children, I'm sure, were big fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned Charlie's Angels before, and I didn't mean to sound derogatory because I
Oh no, no.
absolutely love Charlie's Angels. Actually, I probably love it now more than I did as a kid.
Actually, I do
Um,
too.
it's just so much freaking fun to watch,
It is.
and Farrah for a while there was up for Farrah Fawcett was up for possibly considering to play Jamie because there was a big deal about
Oh,
Lindsay being not contracted to Universal. They killed her in the first two-part episode of 6 Mil. They wanted her back, and it was just a crazy mess. And they were
yeah.
considering all
And
these
you had the
other
Lee
actors.
Majors connection at that point, obviously, because she was married to him. And
Absolutely. But Lee did really not want her to do Charlie's Angels anyway. That was the real reason she left Charlie's Angels. So I'm not sure that would have worked out anyway with her being the Bionic Woman.
now, as much as I loved her, yeah, I'm glad it worked out the way it did,
Yeah.
because Lindsay Wagner is just amazing. And boy, both of those shows, that it's amazing how they've just remained so popular over the years,
Yes.
isn't it? My goodness, I grew up watching it, and of course, so it has a special place in my heart. But I see younger people. After I posted my review of this last week of your book, I saw people in their 20s talking about how much they love this show, and that to me is just amazing. You don't see that with a lot of shows that are 50 or close to 50 years old.
No, you don't. Actually, I was in Barnes and Noble in the DVD Blu-ray section one day, and this little girl comes up to her mother with a Blu-ray of Bewitched. And she's like, Mom,
Oh,
look, it's Bewitched. She's 12 years old. So don't think that these shows aren't affecting young people today, because they are. You've got, what is it, Cozy TV, you've got Me
yeah.
TV, you've got what is it? The Get
Oh,
TV.
Get
So
TV.
many
Yeah,
different networks that are focused,
yeah.
Pluto TV on the internet. People are finding these shows all over again. The classic shows are not going away,
It's true.
and
And
you're
I'm
and
sorry.
they're
Go ahead.
compared to the darkness of the new stuff. It's, I'm sorry, I'm always going to watch that girl and not, what is it, The Walking Dead, or whatever's
Right.
on.
Yeah. Hey, well, what's funny is that's a show that I remember my parents having on when I was a kid. That girl, with starring Marlo Thomas, for those who don't know. And I remember I was little, so I barely remember it. And just recently, one of those many cable networks or streaming services has that, I'm like, let me put on an episode. Next thing I know, 3 hours have passed, and I've just been binge watching it. I'm like, what a great show!
Yeah.
Yeah, some people might
They
think
were
the humor is
adorable.
a little corny, but it's nice and fun, and it's just darn funny. There was such an emphasis on the writing in those shows back then, whether it was a sitcom, whether it was a drama. You only had really the three major TV networks back then: NBC, ABC, and CBS. And I don't know, the quality was just so good in so many of those shows. That's why and what's great is, like you said, there's so many of those are easy to find now. I think Bionic Woman is on Pluto or one of those. It's got the whole series on there. It might be Roku. It's on one of
I
the
think,
free streaming ones that have ads, I think.
yeah, yeah.
And $6 Million Man, I have the DVDs of all of them, but I know that that's all on
Did
Peacock
you get
right
the
now.
Blu-ray? Have you got the
I
Blu-ray?
don't have the Blu-ray. I have an older
I
set.
did the commentary on the Blu-ray for $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, and both of those Blu-rays, which by the way were put out by Shout Factory TV, and the packaging and the extra packages were produced by Justin Beam, who is a colleague, a wonderful guy, very talented. And I have never ever seen the episodes look so pristine, not just on the new Blu-ray of $6 Million Man and Bionic Woman. I've never seen any Blu-ray look
Wow.
great as these episodes look on Blu-ray. I mean, it's better than the original run. Amazing. I mean it. I'm
Wow.
not trying to oversell it. I mean it. So
No,
I
I
totally
believe
encourage
you.
you all, who's ever listening, and you, to buy the Blu-ray of the
Oh,
Man
well,
Bionic.
I'll check that out. Christmas is right around the corner too. So for anyone who is interested in sending me a gift, and
There
Herbie
you
J
go.
knows what he's talking about. People who are listening to the audio version of this won't be able to see this, but behind him, it looks like there's dozens and dozens of DVDs, Blu-rays, probably videotapes. That's quite a setup you've got there. I'll tell you, that's pretty cool. You've got some great posters there. I see the lovely Elizabeth Montgomery up over your shoulder, and that's a pretty awesome room there. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. And I did want to talk about some of the other books that you have out here. I printed out a list. Oh my gosh, my friend. I'll tell you, when I started reading, I remember when I was reading the Bewitched book and I saw your name on there, I'm like, this guy, I have a feeling I could be friends with this guy because he seems to, really love this stuff like I do. And the first thing you did after Bewitched book was a book that was, oh, I'm sorry, was a book about one of my favorite shows when I was a kid, and that was the Kung Fu Book of Cain. Um, I actually I haven't even watched it yet. I just got a DVD set of that, the entire series, so I'm anxious to
I'm on
watch
that
that.
too. I
Oh,
did
are you
comic.
really? Okay. Well, gosh, that's awesome. And then you had a Kung Fu Book of Wisdom. You did a book on Life Goes On. I think you have something from Life Goes On behind you too. I love the title of this one. This was one of your first jobs. You were a page at NBC, and
Yeah.
this book is called. And it's you wrote a book about that. It's called NBC and Me: My Life as a Page in a Book. I mean, what a nice connection! What a nice play on words there. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Then you did one about Elizabeth Twitch Upon a Star, which is another fantastic title, The Bewitched Life of Elizabeth Montgomery. And then there's a couple that I have here. I have copies of these. Glamour, Gidgets, and The Girl Next Door, television's iconic women from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then you had sort of a companion piece, Dashing, Daring, and Debonair, TV's top male icons from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I mean, when do you rest? I mean, you write a lot. Your book about Mary Tyler Moore that you did a few years ago. And then I wanted to mention this one. Yeah, actually, you mentioned this a little while ago, and that is your retroactive television, an in-depth perspective on classic TV's social circuitry. And to me, I'll be honest, I haven't read that one yet, but I'm really curious about that. You were talking about that earlier, and it just sounds like a nice look at how TV affects our lives.
Yes, well, thank you for all for mentioning all those. So the retro book, actually, the retro book, the Mary Tyler Moore book, and Twitch Upon a Star, and my new biography of Sean Connery are also now available in audiobook form by
Oh,
Tangent
nice.
Media. And I narrate the introduction to Twitch and the introduction to Sean Connery, but I narrate the entire retroactive television book. I
Wow.
really, really wanted to do that myself. So those are all available
Oh,
in
that's great.
audiobook form. Yeah,
How did you enjoy that process, the recording process? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off
no,
there. That
no,
was
it's tough. It was tough.
I
It is
bet it's
not
got to
an
be
easy
tough.
thing, huh?
I was
What?
just saying, I bet that is tough to do because you have a little cough or you maybe you stumble on a word. You probably it requires some retakes and
Well, the technology today is really amazing, and Tangent Media has an incredible production team that they work with. But what if you mess up, you get to like fix it like automatically with with all the gizmos and gadgets that are available today. Back in the day, I don't know how the heck they did it. Just like back in the day when I was typing my first Bewitched book on a typewriter
right.
with
Isn't it
with
funny to look back on
whiteout.
that now?
What's that?
It's kind of funny when you look back on that now. I was just thinking the same thing yesterday as I was, typing things on my computer, and it's so easy to fix errors. And I look back at the typewriter with the whiteout, and
Crazy. It was
yeah.
crazy. I mean, if you made a mistake on one page, you had to retype the whole page.
Oh, it was, yeah. I'm so glad things have advanced the way that they have. It makes our lives so much easier as writers. And you mentioned your book, your Sean Connery book. That was just on page 2 of my paper because yeah, you have so many books. I needed multiple copies. I just hadn't gotten to that one yet. But yeah, that's an exciting thing. I mean, who doesn't love Sean Connery? I mean, a lot of people consider him the definitive James Bond, and there was so much more than that in his movie career. It
Yeah.
just I know one of my favorite movies, if not my favorite one of him, was one of the last. It might have been the last one he did, Finding Forrester. Was that the last? I know it
Actually,
was towards
the
the end of
last
his.
one he did was um, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
which he was not happy with and not pleased with, and he shortly retired after that. He retired shortly after that. Right around the time when his first wife came out with that book that said that she had an abusive relationship with him, and
Oh, that's right.
and
I
that
remember
was
that.
that was a downer. So he
Yeah.
was just that was it. He was done after that movie came out and his wife came out with that book. It was all over. He just retreated. But the book itself was difficult to write because there were so many Sean Connery biographies out there, so many James Bond books out there. I
Hmm.
wanted to make sure that mine was distinguished, and I did that in several different ways. Number one, it features a foreword by Barbara Carrera, who was his co-star from Never Say Never Again, his last
Hmm.
movie as Bond. And it also features an introduction from Richard DeMarco, who was his lifelong friend from the days of Scotland. I mean, from when they were babies.
That's wonderful.
Also, too, I cover all of his films before, during, and after James Bond. So it's a crossbreed of his entire life and career, with exclusive commentary from those I mentioned in Tippi Hedren, who we starred in Marnie with, Brendan Lynch, his another lifelong friend, Luciana Paluzzi, who was his co-star from Thunderball. She was a Bond girl, and these women loved him. You know, there were some women who didn't, but there were a lot of women who did. And as far as him being the definitive James Bond, absolutely. I mean, the
Yeah.
other guys are great.
Yeah.
Don't
I have
take
nothing to say bad about any of them, really.
okay,
They're
but
different. Yeah,
Sean Connery was Sean Connery. You know,
exactly. Yeah.
He was James Bond.
If they're making James Bond movies 50 years from now, those James Bonds will be compared to Sean Connery. That's just
Correct.
the way that it is going to play out.
Absolutely.
So that's exciting. And you told me before we started the show that you've got another book that you've started writing. Well, actually, no. I want to go back to a second here. There's a book that this is timely because Christmas is coming up, and you released a book. Was it just last year that this book came
Yeah.
out, Herbie J?
Mhm.
Yeah, and that is the 12 Best Secrets of Christmas: A Treasure House of December Memories Revealed. And could you tell my listeners and watchers a little bit about that one?
Yeah, that really was a very different book from my wheelhouse, I guess that's the term today. I wanted to do that book for a long, long time. It's about personal. It's a personal book about my life growing up in Rochester, New York, in the 60s and 70s at Christmas time. But I wanted to universalize also those stories. And I came to realize that in the process of writing it and then sharing early versions of it with other people to read it before it's published, everybody was feeling like it was their story. And we are not as different as we all think we might be. We all
It's
have,
true.
whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever holiday, it's all about love and family. So each chapter is a portion of my life at a particular Christmas, and each chapter has a message or a secret of Christmas, and that's the 12 Best Secrets of Christmas. And I had Dean Butler, God bless him, from Little House on the Prairie, who wrote the
Yeah.
foreword. Jerry Hauser wrote the introduction. Jerry, amazing talent, amazing actor from the Brady Bunch, but he also did the voiceover work on many, many productions through the years, including Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. He did the commercial voiceover for Rudolph during the commercials in
Oh,
the
wow.
80s.
Wow,
So
I've always been a fan of Jerry, and I remember for a while I used to go into like Best Buy stores, and I would hear Jerry's voice, announcing things, and I might say his name to whomever I was with, and they might think, yeah, I don't know who that is, and then I would nerd out. I mean, like, you don't know he was married to Marsha Brady on the Brady's, on the Brady
well, yeah,
Brides, and
exactly,
yeah, and he was
exactly. And
on
he
a movie
did,
called Gus in the '70s.
or Summer of 42, which was his big,
Yes,
big film. But no,
yeah,
Jerry, what I love about both Jerry and Dean is their down to earth personalities, and I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of celebrities like that and befriended them, and it's really warms my heart to see that they're not affected by the Hollywood machine. A lot of people are,
yeah.
but not the people that I have come to know and call friends, including Dean and Jerry.
That's wonderful, and I know you've done events with them in the past,
Yep.
and you have an event coming up now. Herbie J runs this great thing, folks. It's well, yeah, I'll let you talk about this. You used to have events in the past that unfortunately you had to stop doing for a long time because of COVID and
Yeah.
just concerns, and thankfully you're able to start them back up again. And you have something coming up in December, don't you, Herbie J?
I do. It's the Classic TV Preservation Society, which is my nonprofit organization dedicated to the positive influence of classic TV shows, much like the retroactive television book. We do these live events, and I have one coming up in December at the Gloria Gifford Conser- Performance. What the heck is the title of that theater? It's the Gloria Gifford Theater.
Okay,
And
that works.
Conservatory, there we go. The Gloria Gifford Conservatory for the Performing Arts.
That is a
We
mouthful.
There it is a mouthful. And we're going to have Karen Richmond, Dean
Ah.
Butler, Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi.
Oh, wow.
Yes, Gloria Gifford, and other celebrities there. We're going to have a celebration of the holidays, It is a classic, it's a classic Hollywood holiday live event with Herbie J Pilato and
That's
friends.
great.
And it's going to harken back to my first events, which were at the Barnes and Noble in Burbank, which led to my TV show then again with Herbie J Pilato. And it's going to be that same kind of feeling. I'm very, very excited about it. Everybody's going to be there. And you're
Oh,
all
that's
welcome. If
great.
you're in LA, it's December 6th at the
If
Gloria.
I live in Delaware, so I'm pretty far away from there. But I know in the past when you've announced these things, I'm like, if I lived out in California, I would probably be going to all these. I'd be spending a lot of money, but that's okay. I'd be really happy because I'm around all these cool people. I mean, the people you mentioned, like one person I think is fantastic is you mentioned Karen Richmond.
Oh,
Um, a lot of people have, like we said, their favorite Bonds or their favorite, whatever characters, but she was my Gidget. I never watched like the original Gidget movies from, I guess, the 50s and 60s, but in the mid 80s, she starred in the new Gidget. And I used to be on Saturday afternoons on a Philadelphia station. I'd watch it every week. It's just this fun, charming show. You want to talk about charm? That was a charming show. She was fantastic on there. And then she played on
Frank
the
Brady's
Brady's
wife.
as yeah, and just a very talented actress. I love when I see her pop up in things. I know that I'm always going to be entertained. So that sounds like a wonderful event. And yes, folks, if you have a chance to go to that in December at the Gifford Theater, what the Gifford Conservatory, whatever.
Brilliant Gifford Conservatory of Performing Arts.
There you go. And, I'll contain a link to Herbie J's website where you can learn more about that. And, I did want to ask you this before I let you go, because I started to say this, but then we segued, and that was the next book that you're working on that is also Christmas related and also TV related. I know it's just in the works, but you've got me already excited about this. Can you tell my listeners and
Yes, this
watchers about
is
that?
it's called Christmas TV Memories. It's going to be published next Christmas by Applause Books, and it's going to focus and explore all the specials of Christmas, animated TV movies, variety specials, and sitcom episodes. It's going to cover the whole spectrum.
Wow.
So
Oh, that
also too,
sounds
next
wonderful.
fall is my Dinah Rigg biography, One Tough
Oh,
Day, which will be published by the Mississippi University of Mississippi Press.
you said it's called One Tough Dame?
One Tough Dame.
That's another fantastic title. That's great. Oh, she was just wonderful, wasn't she? And
She
boy,
was
she kept
dynamite.
working. I remember seeing her on Game of Thrones shortly before she passed, and just such a wonderful. She was a tough dame, and just
And
always
beautiful.
so
I
stunning.
mean, when she did, we were talking about Bond, when she did On Her Majesty's Secret Service with George Lazenby, who produced or replaced Sean Connery, which he should not have done. Sean Connery should have did that movie.
Yeah, he should have.
Um, Dinah Rigg I never realized how beautiful she was until I saw her
Yeah.
in that film.
It's funny
Gorgeous.
when I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. But when she was on Game of Thrones, I was watching that with my wife, and she didn't really know much about Diana Rigg. She had never seen the Avengers and things like that. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I've seen that woman in various things. That older woman is just very, very good." I'm like, "Honey, have you ever seen her when she was young?" And I brought up a picture of her as Miss Emma
Emma
Peel
Peel.
and the Avengers. I do one of her karate things, and and she's like, "Oh my God, what a stunning, beautiful woman!" And she
She
was
was absolutely
breathtaking, and
gorgeous.
it was such a great actress. And I liked that Bond movie. I mean, I would have preferred if
Oh,
Sean Connery was in it, but she was very good in
absolutely.
that.
It's one of the best James Bond films.
Yeah.
This is what happened. Sean was like, okay, I don't want to do Bond anymore because he doesn't have a lot of character development. You guys are getting too much into the gadgets, yada yada yada. But on Her Majesty's Secret Service, he gets married, and there is character development. So he
Yeah.
made a huge mistake by not being in that movie, because that movie was great, and it's now in perspective considered one of the best Bond films.
Yeah,
If he
it is.
would have
Isn't that
done it,
something?
it
Oh
would have been.
yeah. I think so too. That's the one you'd always be hearing people talk about. And I want to give a little love to the last one that he did too. Never Say Never Again. I think sometimes people view that as being a little inferior to the earlier ones. I think that's outstanding. That's one of my favorites.
It absolutely is. And I remember when I first saw it, yeah, I was like, okay, where's the James Bond theme? It seemed the lighting seems different than the other films. The budget doesn't seem that big.
Hmm.
But when I watched it now with these mature eyes, all these years later, it's like, oh my God, it's a fantastic James Bond entry. And what a way to go out. you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
it was
And one
terrific.
thing as a TV fan, one thing I liked about that too, and I bet you do this kind of thing too, is that when you see someone from a TV show that you love in a smaller role, you mentioned Barbara Carrera. Her brother in that movie was played by Gavin. Was it Gavin O'Hurley? Is that the
Yeah,
actor's name? Who was one of the Chuck Cunninghams on Happy Days? And I'm like, there's Chuck
that's right.
Cunningham. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I've been watching some of the old $6 Million Mans and Bionic Womans lately, and that's another fun thing where you can just kind of, if you look at those shows now, and you'll see actors and actresses who were just starting out, in their careers in certain episodes, and or
Buddy,
just
that's all I do are watch these older shows now. Okay. I watch Streets of San Francisco, Perry Mason,
oh,
Medical
nice,
Center. You see all and just for exactly the reasons you mentioned, that there
yeah,
is this amazing amount of talent on screen before they became stars. And it's just so much fun to watch.
yeah, exactly. And just the way you would see like just stars from shows that you love. Like we mentioned the very first pilot movie for the $6 Million Man, and you had a nurse in there who was played by Barbara Anderson, who was big from
Ironside.
Ironside. Thank you. I don't know why I have the whole DVD collection right back there, Herbie J, and I couldn't remember the name of the show, but she was on there, and then she had a little stint on Mission Impossible. There's another stunning actress as well. But yeah, you just see all these people pop up in things, and I just love it. I really nerd out on that stuff, and I'll say if you're like me and Herbie J, if you really enjoy those kinds of things, boy, check out the $6 Million Man and Bionic Woman book and all these other ones that I mentioned. I'm going to include a link to Herbie J's page. You can
Yeah,
be
you
found
could
multiple
order them.
places online.
You could order them directly from me if you'd like to go to herbiejpilato.com, but they're available on amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com. But if you want a personally signed copy, you can just contact me, of course, through Facebook, Instagram, X, whatever it's called, and
Yeah.
LinkedIn, wherever. I'm all over the place.
He is all over the place, and go find him in those places because, like I said, very entertaining. Not just about TV, but just good things about life too. You'll follow him, and I bet you're going to smile when you read his stuff.
Thanks, bud.
Oh, you're welcome. And I thank you for being on the show today, my friend. This has been a blast for me. I could talk to you probably for another hour about these things, but I
Absolutely.
really appreciate you taking the time to do this, Herbie J.
Buddy, thank you so much for inviting me, for having your own wonderful spirit. And
Thank
let's
you.
all be positive all the time. And happy holidays, everybody, early.
Yes, happy holidays early, and thank you for listening or watching, whichever one you do. Have a wonderful day, folks.